Welcome, everyone, and Happy New Year. I am assuming that if you're joining this session, you have submitted or are in the process of submitting your MBA application. And I want to start with something that may sound counterintuitive at this point, because you are just celebrating a win, submitting an application, which is huge. And first and foremost, congratulations. But while you've spent months crafting your story, perfecting your essays, coordinating recommendation letters, and making sure that they're submitting on time, and you finally click that submit, and the question is, now what? What do I do? And most of the time, we see applicants that they're just waiting. They don't want to invest a lot of time and energy into preparation process because they think, well, first and foremost, the hard part is over, but also I don't want to invest my emotional energy in something that hasn't happened yet. And what I need you to understand, that putting an application through, it's not the most important part. Obviously, that's the first barrier to entry, but that's only 50% of getting to the finish line. Now, this does not mean that, I could have submitted a mediocre application. That's not what I'm saying at all. But what separates strong candidates who get accepted from those who don't isn't just what's in their application file, it's what they do during the exact window we are in right now. Most applicants treat the post-submission period like dead time. They've done their work, now they wait. Maybe they refresh their inbox 100 times because you're thinking about the outcomes, but nothing more. They tell themselves there's nothing left to do until interview invites come out. And that's where most of applicants fall behind, because while you're passively waiting, other candidates are actively preparing. And when those interview invitations start going out in about 4 to 6 weeks, the difference between who's ready and who's scrambling becomes painfully obvious. So today, what we're going to do is talk about what actually happens after you submit, what you should be doing now, and how to position yourself as a candidate who not only earns the interview invite, but converts it into an acceptance, into an offer of acceptance. Let's ground ourselves in the actual timeline you're working with. So if you've just submitted or about to submit round 2, you're looking at interview invitations going out roughly 4 to 6 weeks from the deadline. Some schools move faster, some slower, but that's typically the window. And the part that catches a lot of applicants off guard is that not everyone gets an interview invitation. Those aren't participation trophies. Top business schools are selective about who they bring to the interview stage because interviews are resource intensive. They're evaluating whether you're worth that investment of time. But what's even more important, even among candidates who do get invited to interview, the majority will receive rejections. Getting the interview invitation is not the same as getting an offer of acceptance. It's a necessary step, but it's not sufficient to just show up and think that you'll get an offer of admission just because you were invited to interview. So what separates candidates who convert their interview into an acceptance from those who don't, it's not really intelligence, it's not really credentials. Everyone at the interview stage is qualified on paper, otherwise you wouldn't have received an interview invitation. The difference is preparation. Strategic, intentional preparation that started before the interview invitations even hit their inbox. And that's what we need to talk about today. So while you're waiting, admission committees are working. They're reading your applications in the context of thousands of other applicants. They're evaluating not just whether you're qualified, but whether you're the right fit for their specific program, their culture, their employment outcomes, and their community. Oftentimes, strong applicants get invited to interview to one M7, but not the other. This is the elements of what they're looking for. They're also identifying, the admission committee is also identifying gaps, questions they have about your story, concerns they need addressed, strengths they want to probe deeper on. The interview is their opportunity to resolve uncertainty and confirm hypotheses about your candidacy. What most candidates don't realize is the committee is determining right now which candidates are worth bringing in, and they're making that call based on what's on your profile, of course, what's on your file, meaning your application submission. But also, they're looking at their capacity and their confidence that you're able to articulate your value in the actual interview when you show up. So what should you be doing now? You should be preparing as if your interview invites is already on your calendar. Because if you wait until you get the interview invitation to start your thinking about your answers to the questions, you already lost substantial, valuable time that you can't get back. So let me give you a sense of what I mean by that. One of the biggest mistakes candidates make in it is assuming all MBA interviews are the same. They're absolutely not, especially at the M7 level. Harvard runs rapid fire interviews. You might have 25 questions in 30 minutes. There's no time for rambling. You need to be really sharp and concise and ready to pivot quickly no matter what question comes your way. Wharton has the team-based discussion. You're being evaluated on how you collaborate, how you listen, whether you dominate a conversation or contribute thoughtfully. It's a completely different skill set. Booth and MIT require additional materials before your interview. Video essays, written responses. You're being assessed on multiple dimensions, not just your live conversation skills. And these typically happen within 2 weeks of the interview invite. Kellogg invites about 70% of applicants to interview, which sounds generous until you realize that the majority of those 70% are still going to get rejected. The interview is where the admission committee separates candidates who are genuinely aligned with the Kellogg collaborative culture from those who just sound good on paper. And across all these schools, what they're looking isn't for generic enthusiasm. They want nuanced responses that reflect a deep understanding of their specific program. They can tell when you have done your homework and when you are recycling answers to what you would say to other schools as well. That level of nuance doesn't happen by accident, and it definitely doesn't happen if you're trying to prepare in the 72 hours, 1 week after you get your interview invitation. So let me walk you through why preparation timing matters so much. Interview prep isn't a single event. It's not something you can accomplish in one session or even 1 week. It's a 3-phase process, and each phase requires time. So this doesn't mean I can do those in one session at a time. Each phase requires several sessions to prepare. So phase 1 is understanding what questions the school asks and get your story straight. That sounds simple, but it's actually not. There's nuance in what you say that will be interpreted based on how you use language. You need to know which experiences to lead with, how to frame your goals in a way that align with the school's strength, how to address potential weaknesses without sounding defensive. This is fundamental work that you need to have down, and again, multiple sessions to get this right. We do have an article on our website that talks about interview preparation, and it's a very extensive process. I think we have 55 questions in there that you can prepare for. So 55 questions is not easy to do in one session. Phase 2 is now, once you have those answers to the 55 questions, now you're going to internalize those responses, not memorization, internalization. There's a huge difference between the two. Memorization makes you sound robotic, and if the question isn't asked in the way you prepared it, then you can't give an answer. Internalization means you've lived with your story long enough that you can tell it naturally, conversationally, adapting to the flow of the interview without losing your thread. This takes repetition and reflection and asking a question in nuanced ways to make sure that you fully understand it and fully integrate it. Again, it doesn't happen overnight. Phase 3 is practice execution in real conversations. You need to practice saying your story out loud, responding to follow-up questions, handling curveballs. You need feedback on your pacing, your tone, and your body language. This is where most candidates underestimate how much work is required to prepare for your interview. The reality is that if you try to cram all of these phases into the week before your interview, you'll show up unprepared because you just haven't given yourself enough time. You might have decent content, but you won't have the fluency that makes for an excellent interview. And fluency is definitely what separates those who get offers, multiple, and those who don't. So let me share what we see at Sia Admissions. We have two types of clients when it comes to interview preparation. The first group works with us through the full application process, and within a week of submitting their applications, sometimes sooner, especially those who target Kellogg, we start interview preparation. We're not waiting for the invitation. We're assuming it's coming and preparing accordingly. The second group reaches out to us later in the process. They get their interview invitation, they realize they need help, and they contact us with maybe a week before their scheduled interview. They want a few hours of coaching to get ready. And what happens when we run that first mock interview, they realize just how far behind they are. They thought they knew their story, they thought they would wing it, but when we start probing with the kinds of questions Booth, Harvard, Kellogg actually asks, they stumble. They oftentimes also ramble. They can't articulate why the specific school, because all of them sound the same in their research. Why now? Why they're the right candidate for the admission committee at the school or for the school itself. Now, we still work with them. We do strong interview prep, but what they're doing is cramming, and we can't speed that up. We can't speed the process up of you internalizing and being able to answer the questions in multiple ways. Because in these situations, they're trying to compress those 3 phases into 1 week. And even though we give them solid frameworks and feedback, they don't have really the time to internalize and practice the way our full clients do. The conversion rates aren't even close. Candidates who start early and move through the 3 phases methodically, they show up to their interview fluent, confident, and ready. We have our clients who report consistently that our process made them feel even more ready than they needed to be for the interview. That's the level of preparations that we're talking about. And candidates who scramble with one session or 2, some of them pull it off, but oftentimes they don't, because it's just not enough time to prepare for a really important, life-changing interview. And the tragedy is not that those candidates aren't less qualified, because if they were invited to interview, they're qualified. It's because they didn't give themselves the time to prepare properly. And again, this is about understanding your flow as well and your preparation time, how long it takes you to do this. And do it well, of course. So what does it actually take to win in an interview? Let's get a bit more specific. First, you need authentic alignment with the school's culture. I'm not talking about generic enthusiasm. I'm not talking about saying, I love your collaborative environment because you read that on their website. Admission committees can absolutely smell fake enthusiasm. I'm talking about demonstrating that you understand what makes Booth different from Kellogg, what makes Columbia different from NYU Stern. You need to show them you've done your homework and you understand not just what you learn, but how you'll think differently after their program. Second is fluency in your narrative. You should be able to tell your story in a way that feels natural, conversational, and responsive. If you sound like you're reciting a script, you're absolutely losing the interview because they want to have a conversation with you, not watch you perform a monologue or read an answer. Third, they want strategic responses to probing questions. The best candidates don't just answer the question they've been asked, they address the underlying concerns the interviewer has. So you need to be on your toes the entire time. If there's a gap in your resume, you acknowledge it proactively. If your goals seem disconnected from your background, you build the bridge before they ask. This is advanced preparation, and what separates good candidates from really great ones. And fourth, conversational execution. You need to practice saying this stuff out loud. You need to get comfortable with the rhythm of the interview. And sometimes you don't even know the kind of person that's going to show up on the other end. You need to be solid in your responses so that if they are stoic, you're not thrown off. And you need to be able to participate in the back and forth of the conversation. Sometimes they're going to throw you off by giving you a curveball. You need to have the response without losing your composure at any point during the discussion. You cannot fake this, and they're not things you can develop in 72 hours before your interview. This is the difference between being ready and having the confidence of the interviewer that when they submit their report to the committee, they are wholeheartedly endorsing your candidacy from those who are getting a lukewarm response and oftentimes leading to rejection. So what I want you to take away from this session is that your moment is coming. If you submitted a strong application, there is a very good chance you're going to get that interview invitation in the 4 to 6 weeks from the deadline. The question isn't whether you'll get the opportunity. The question is whether you'll be ready when that opportunity comes. The candidates who get offers, the ones who are posting on forums that they got into Wharton, Booth, Kellogg, they didn't start preparing the week before the interview invites came out. They started preparing the moment they submitted their application. They assumed the interview was coming. They didn't wait for confirmation to start getting ready. And because of that, when the invitation hit their inbox, they weren't scrambling, they weren't panicking. They were at the final stages of getting ready. They've already done the foundational work. They've internalized their story, they've practiced their execution, and continue to practice, of course, until the actual interview. And they had essentially all they had to do was show up and deliver, irrespective of the curveball the interviewers threw at them. You definitely can be that candidate, but only if you start preparing as soon as you submit your application. Only if you treat the next few weeks as active preparation time, not passive wait time. Your friends are definitely preparing right now, and the candidates you are competing against for those spots are also preparing. They are not sitting there refreshing their inbox. So the question is, are you going to be ready when your moment arrives? And the first steps in doing that is going to our website and getting that list of 55 questions first. But if you're sitting here thinking, okay, I get it, I need to start preparing now, we should definitely talk. We have interview preparation consultation calls. This is a conversation where we discuss essentially the schools that you've applied to, their specific interview format, and how we can help you show up ready. Maybe you're already working through your preparation and just need some structure. Maybe you're starting from scratch and really need that full 3-phase framework. Maybe you have already gotten the interview, especially as of next week, with Kellogg, and you're realizing that you are behind. Wherever you are, we meet you there. And what I know is that candidates who invest in strategic preparation get different outcomes than the ones who wing it. That's not a guess. That's what we see every single application cycle. So if you're serious about converting your interview into an acceptance, book a call, and let's talk specifically about your situation and figure out what makes sense for you. This is definitely your moment. You've earned it by submitting a really strong application. And now let's talk to make sure that you're ready to close the deal when the interview invitation arrives. Thank you for joining me. We have about 9 minutes left in this session. I want to answer your questions if you have any in the chat. So if you haven't taken the time to actually write your questions, please do so. And we have some questions that came through the registration, so we'll go through those as well. All right, let's go through some registration questions that have come in. And by the way, next week we're talking about round 1 planning. So if you are going through this process, kind of trying to figure out what's your future application going to look like, definitely register. Or if you have friends who are interested in applying next year, definitely share the interview, the event invite with them as well. So the first question is, how do I plan my preparation for interview so it adds depth rather than repeat what's already in my application? That's a really important question. One of the components that I encourage all applicants to do is understand first and foremost, what is the interview style of the school that you're targeting. At the moment, we have all of them 7 full guides that include interview on our website. So I encourage you to go and look there. Some interviews are blind, which means the interviewer only has your resume. And other interviews, the interviewer has read your full application. So your preparation is going to depend on which format is you are presented with. Obviously, the ones who don't only have your resume, you can repeat some stories. Obviously, you don't want to veer away from your character that you presented that landed you an interview. You don't want to change your goals. You don't want to do anything different, but you want your preparation to be additive. And then for those who have read, where the interviewer has read your entire application, there you need different stories. So you have to remember that those are the 2 differences between that candidate. And always ask as you prepare your greatest stories, what character am I communicating with this angle? Am I showcasing the kind of candidate business schools are looking for? And that is a huge assessment that you should be making with each of your responses to all of the 55 questions. Okay, next question. How should I review my submitted resume and essays to spot weak areas that interviewers may probe so I can prepare for confident explanations? Excellent question also. Oftentimes you are too close to your story. I mean, you lived it. You live your story, right? And it's hard for you to determine what exactly is considered weak or not. But from a macro level perspective, you want to look at your academics, so your GPA, your test scores. You want to look at the experiences that you've had and have they translated transferable skills to the future job that you want. And you want to communicate, extracurriculars. Have you had any? If not, why haven't you had extracurricular engagement, right? So those are macro level. Obviously, there's always nuance. When I read a resume, I am able to spot those, but it's always obviously individual specific. But those are the categories of assessment that you should be looking at in your candidacy. And not everything, you don't need to make a story up to kind of address it, but you definitely want to see where their weaknesses are so that you can preemptively address it without, and making it flow as part of your conversation and not sort of open a can of worms that doesn't need to be opened. Excellent. Next question. And if you have any questions from whichever platform you're joining us, please write them in the comments. We won't read your name. We won't show your name on the screen. We'll just read your question. We have about 4 minutes left, so you still have time to write your specific question. What preparation structure keeps me proactive during weeks of silence so I avoid rushing once the interview invite arrive? You can definitely rewatch this video and look through the preparation frameworks. I would start, as I mentioned earlier, with the 55 questions we have on our website. Start with that process. And then obviously you want to make sure that you have answers to all those questions with level of detail and nuance. That will definitely take you a couple of weeks to do, especially if you're doing it alone. Okay, next question. How do I prepare for unexpected questions that I didn't practice during my preparation? Unfortunately, you can't do it by yourself. This kind of, this level of how can I prepare for questions that I don't know that will be asked is a really difficult challenge that every applicant has to go through. However, if you are working with a coach, the coach should be stress testing your responses and probing and pushing and bringing in curveballs. Like that's what preparation is all about. It's not just making your experience smooth pre-interview and then you have a really difficult interviewer and you're not ready, right? So have other people in your community, if you don't have a coach, have other people in your community ask you questions. You can give some of them some questions to ask you, but then ask them to come up with new questions to trip you up, essentially, and see how you respond, and you go from there. Okay, last question. What's the best way to answer why this school and why now question? This is a hidden goals question. You should never talk about this question without anchoring it on your goals. And your goals need to be clear in the context of what you want to do, but also what you want to learn. And what you want to learn then translates into why this school. Why this school is going to help you with all the areas of development that you need and make it as specific as possible. That's where the nuances come into play that you're able to sell, essentially, why you have chosen this particular school and why this particular school is the right fit for you. Why now question? I mean, this is a very straightforward question. It's like, I'm ready to make this transition. And you make it very specific to your case and your experiences. But, I mean, do you want to wait? Is there opportunities in waiting? And if your answer is yes, then you're not ready for business school. So the answer will be from the business school as a reject and not an admit. So you want to make sure that you lay out the foundation as to why now is so important for you to pursue an MBA. All right. Well, thank you guys for watching. I wish you good luck in your submissions. And obviously, I want to see as many interview invites as possible. So let us know if you got in your interview and where. But next week, we're going to talk about round 1 2026 planning. We are essentially 9 months away until that happens. So if you're thinking about next year, or you have a friend or a colleague or a sibling who is looking to apply next year, definitely share the event. It's free to join. Obviously, ask questions in advance as much as possible. Excellent. Well, thank you, and hope you had a wonderful New Year, and I will see you next week.
Hi, I'm Susan Barashai, founder of Sia Admissions. If you'd like to go deeper into MBA strategy, watch the next video here. And if you want more insights on building a standout application, click here to subscribe.